You didn't stop trusting yourself overnight. It happened slowly after the times you ignored your inner voice, after you stayed when something felt wrong, after you told yourself you were overreacting. Each moment was small, but together they taught you to doubt your own knowing. Now you pause before decisions that once felt natural. You ask others what they think. You second guess what you feel. And when something doesn't work out, you turn inward with blame instead of understanding. That is not because you're broken, it's because you learn to survive by disconnecting. Trust isn't lost because you made mistakes. It's lost when you abandon yourself in moments that mattered. When you silence your intuition to keep peace, to be liked, to avoid conflict, the cost of that silence is subtle, but it echoes long after. Rebuilding trust does not begin with big promises or perfect choices. It begins with listening again, with noticing the quiet signals in your body, the gentle yes, the tight no. These signals never left you, just stop believing them. If you've been waiting to feel confident before trusting yourself, listen closely. Confidence comes after trust, not before. It grows each time you honor what you feel, even in small ways, especially in small ways. There may be fear when you start listening again, fear of being wrong, fear of disappointing others. That fear is not a warning, it's a memory of times when trusting yourself didn't feel safe. You are not there anymore. Stay with this message. Trust is rebuilt through kindness, not punishment, through patience, not pressure. And the more you choose to stand by yourself, the more your inner voice will grow steady again. You were never meant to live doubting your own wisdom. Trusting yourself is not something you earn, it's something you return to. And that return can begin now. I want to begin very gently because the loss of trust in yourself did not happen through one loud moment. It happened quietly. It happened in small ways that were easy to overlook at the time. And because it happened quietly, many people believe it is something mysterious or permanent. It is not. It is understandable, and it can be healed. You were not born doubting yourself as a child. You knew what you felt. You knew when something felt right and when it did not. Your body spoke clearly, and you listened. You cried when you were uncomfortable. You reached for what felt loving. You moved away from what felt unsafe. Trust was natural then, because no one had yet taught you to question your own knowing. Over time, life introduced moments when trusting yourself did not feel safe. Perhaps you were told you were too sensitive. Perhaps you were told you were imagining things. Perhaps you learned that harmony mattered more than honesty, or that being liked mattered more than being true. These lessons were not taught with cruelty. They were taught through repetition. Each time you felt something and were encouraged to ignore it, something shifted inside you. Not dramatically, just slightly. A small tightening, a small hesitation, a small question. You learned to pause before responding to your own inner voice. That pause was the beginning of doubt. You may remember moments when you sensed something was wrong but stayed anyway. Moments when your body felt tight, but you told yourself you were overreacting. Moments when you knew what you wanted to say, but chose silence instead. Each of these moments was understandable. You were trying to stay safe, connected, or accepted. I want you to hear this clearly. You did not lose trust in yourself because you were weak. You lost it because you were adapting. Adaptation is a form of intelligence. It is how sensitive people survive environments that do not always honor truth. When you look back now, it may feel painful to see how often you dismissed yourself. That pain is not there to punish you. It is there because you care. It is there because a part of you remembers your original wholeness. Self-trust erodes when self-abandonment becomes a habit. Not abandonment in a dramatic sense, but in subtle ways. Saying yes when your heart said no. Smiling when something hurt. Moving forward when something inside asked you to pause. Each time you did this, you sent yourself a message. The message was not spoken, but it was felt. It said, my feelings are not reliable, or my knowing creates trouble, or it is safer not to listen. Over time, these messages shaped your inner relationship. You began to look outside yourself for answers. You asked others what they thought before asking yourself. You waited for permission to feel certain ways. This was not because you lacked wisdom. It was because you learned not to trust it. I want you to know that your inner voice never stopped speaking. It simply learned to whisper. It learned to wait until it felt safe enough to be heard. When trust is broken in relationships, we understand that it takes time and consistency to rebuild. The same is true for the relationship you have with yourself. You cannot rebuild trust through pressure or self-criticism. Trust grows through kindness and presence. You may notice that when you try to make decisions now, your mind fills with doubt. You second guess, you replay options, you worry about being wrong. This does not mean you lack intuition. It means your intuition has not yet felt fully welcomed back. I often remind people that the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Even when you doubted yourself, your body continued to send signals. Tightness, unease, fatigue, these were not failures. They were messages that had not yet been honored. When you ignored those signals, it was not because you were careless. It was because you were trying to manage life the best way you knew how. You were choosing what felt safest in that moment. I want you to offer compassion to the part of you that learned to doubt. That part was not trying to harm you. It was trying to protect you from rejection, conflict, or pain. Protection often looks like disconnection when there is no other option available. You may feel grief as you remember times you did not stand by yourself. Allow that grief. Grief is a sign that your heart is opening again. It means you are ready to heal the relationship with yourself. There is no benefit in judging your past choices now. Judgment keeps you in the past. Understanding brings you back to the present, where change is possible. I want you to notice how it feels to hear that nothing is wrong with you. Even if part of you resists this idea, let it sit gently. Resistance often appears when something kind is unfamiliar. Trust is not rebuilt by demanding confidence. It is rebuilt by showing up for yourself in small ways. That begins with understanding how the trust was lost. Without blame, you may have learned that trusting yourself led to trouble. That lesson may have come from childhood, relationships, or moments where speaking your truth was met with discomfort. Your system learned to associate self-trust with risk. That association can be changed. The body learns through new experiences. Each time you listen to yourself now and respond with kindness, a new message is sent. The message says, it is safe to be here with myself. I want you to remember that you did not stop trusting yourself overnight, and you will not rebuild that trust overnight either. Healing happens through repetition and gentleness. You are not broken for doubting yourself. Doubt is not your enemy. It is a sign that trust is asking to be rebuilt consciously. You may notice moments when you hear your inner voice and immediately dismiss it. This habit is not failure. It is awareness in motion. Awareness gives you choice. Instead of asking yourself, why don't I trust myself? Try asking, when did I learn not to? This question opens compassion rather than criticism. Your life has been shaped by many influences. Not all of them honored your truth. Now you are in a position to choose differently, not by force, but by care. I want you to know that self-trust does not require perfection. You will still make choices that don't unfold as you expect. Trust is not about being right. It is about being loyal to yourself. Loyalty to yourself means listening even when what you hear is inconvenient. It means responding with respect even when you feel unsure. It means staying present with yourself, especially when things feel uncomfortable. You are learning to repair a relationship that matters deeply. The relationship you have with yourself shapes every other relationship in your life. Nothing is lost beyond repair. The part of you that knows how to trust has been waiting patiently. It has not given up on you. As you continue listening, trust will return, not as a loud certainty, but as a quiet steadiness. A sense that you are no longer leaving yourself behind. This is where rebuilding trust begins. Not with promises, not with pressure, but with understanding. Understanding softens the heart. Softening opens the door. And trust begins to walk back in. You are ready for that now. I want to speak with you now about something that is very tender and often difficult to see clearly. It is the way trust in yourself weakens each time you turn away from your own truth. Not in loud or dramatic ways, but in quiet moments when you tell yourself to endure, to stay silent, or to accept what does not feel right inside. Self-abandonment rarely begins as a choice. It begins as a strategy, a way to stay connected, a way to avoid pain, a way to keep love, approval, or safety. When you learn that honoring yourself might cost you something, you chose what felt necessary at the time. That choice deserves compassion. Each time you sensed a quiet no and said yes anyway, something subtle happened. Your inner voice spoke, and it was not answered. Your body signaled discomfort, and it was overridden. These moments may have seemed small, but the body remembers patterns, not explanations. Trust weakens when the body learns that its signals will not be honored. Over time, it stops sending them as clearly, or it sends them through stronger sensations, hoping to be heard. This is not punishment. It is communication. Many people believe they lost trust in themselves because they made the wrong decisions. That is not how trust breaks. Trust breaks when you stop listening to yourself, not when you make mistakes. Mistakes can be integrated. Self-abandonment creates distance. You may remember moments when you felt something was wrong but told yourself to be patient, or moments when you wanted to speak but chose silence to keep peace. Or moments when you felt tired but pushed yourself anyway. These moments taught your system something very specific. They taught your system that your needs were negotiable, that your feelings were secondary. That harmony mattered more than honesty. Again, this was learned for survival, not because something was wrong with you. When this pattern repeats, you begin to doubt your own perceptions. You wonder if you are imagining things. You question your reactions. You look to others to tell you what is real. This is not a lack of wisdom. It is the result of repeated self-override. Self-trust does not disappear all at once. It fades through repetition. Each time you do not show up for yourself, the relationship weakens slightly. Just as in any relationship, trust erodes when promises are broken, even small ones. You may notice that when you try to trust yourself now, there is hesitation, a feeling of uncertainty, a need for reassurance. This does not mean you cannot trust yourself. It means the relationship needs repair. I want you to hear this with great clarity. You are not at fault for learning to abandon yourself. You learned it because at some point it felt safer than honesty. Safety is a powerful teacher. The body remembers those lessons. Even now, when you begin to listen to yourself again, fear may arise. Fear of being wrong, fear of conflict, fear of loss. That fear is not a warning about the present. It is a memory from the past. Self-abandonment often shows up as self-blame later. When something does not work out, you turn inward and criticize yourself. This blame is an attempt to regain control. If you believe it was your fault, you believe you can prevent it next time. Yet blame does not restore trust. It deepens the wound. Trust grows when there is understanding, not punishment. I want you to consider how often you say to yourself, "I should have known better." That phrase assumes you had access to information you did not have. It is unfair. You acted with the awareness available to you then. Every time you criticize your past self, you repeat the pattern of abandonment. You turn away from compassion when it is most needed. Healing begins when you turn toward yourself instead. You may feel resistance to this idea. Resistance often arises when kindness has been withheld for a long time. Let the resistance be present without judgment. It does not need to be removed to begin healing. Self-abandonment can also show up in the body as fatigue, tension, or unease. The body carries the memory of being ignored. When you begin listening again, the body often responds quickly because it has been waiting. Trust is not rebuilt through dramatic declarations. It is rebuilt through consistent presence. Through showing up when something feels uncomfortable instead of turning away. I want you to imagine what it would have felt like if, in those moments from your past, someone had said to you, "I hear you. What you feel matters." That is the voice you are learning to offer yourself now. You cannot change what happened then, but you can change how you respond now. Each time you honor your feelings today, you repair trust retroactively. The body learns that the present is different. You may notice that honoring yourself brings up guilt. Guilt often appears when you break an old agreement. The agreement may have been to stay quiet, to be agreeable, to endure. Guilt does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are doing something new. Trust grows when you choose honesty over habit. Even small acts of honesty matter. Saying no when you mean no. Resting when you are tired. Speaking gently to yourself when you make a mistake. I often remind people that trust is built through reliability. When you begin to respond to yourself with consistency, your inner system relaxes. It no longer has to stay alert or guarded. You may notice that the urge to seek approval lessens as trust grows. Approval becomes less necessary when you feel safe inside yourself. Safety inside creates freedom outside. Self-abandonment taught you to leave yourself in moments of discomfort. Self-trust teaches you to stay with your feelings, to stay with your body, to stay with yourself. Staying does not mean forcing change. It means allowing experience, allowing what is present without judgment. Presence is the foundation of trust. You may still make choices that feel uncertain. Trust does not require certainty. It requires loyalty. Loyalty to yourself means you listen, even if you do not yet know what to do. I want you to notice how different it feels to meet uncertainty with kindness instead of blame. Kindness creates space. Space allows clarity to emerge naturally. You may remember times when you abandoned yourself because you believed love depended on it. Now you are learning that love begins with self-respect. Self-respect is not rigid. It is compassionate. There is nothing you need to fix about your past to rebuild trust. You only need to change how you relate to yourself now. Each moment offers a new choice. The relationship with yourself is the longest relationship you will ever have. It deserves patience. It deserves forgiveness. It deserves care. When you stop abandoning yourself, even in small ways, you send a powerful message inward. The message says, "You matter. I am here. I will listen." That message restores trust more effectively than any promise ever could. As we continue together, we will explore how listening again to the body's honest signals strengthens this trust gently and naturally. For now, allow yourself to recognize this truth. You did not break trust because you were flawed. You broke trust because you were protecting yourself. And now, you are learning a new way to be safe, a way that includes you. I want to speak with you now about the body, because long before the mind begins to doubt, the body is already speaking the truth. Your body has always known what feels safe and what does not. It has always responded honestly to your experiences, even when you were taught not to listen. The body does not use words. It uses sensation, expansion and contraction, ease and tension, warmth and heaviness. These signals are not random. They are the language of inner knowing, expressed through the physical form. When you first learned to doubt yourself, it was often because you were encouraged to override what your body felt. You may have felt tightness in your chest and been told you were being dramatic. You may have felt fatigue and been told to push through. Each time you ignored the body, trust weakened a little more. I want you to understand that the body never stopped communicating. It simply adjusted the way it spoke. When subtle signals were ignored, they became stronger. When strong signals were ignored, they became persistent. This is not failure. It is devotion. Your body has been loyal to you. It has adapted to every belief you held about yourself. When you believed you had to endure, it endured. When you believed you had to stay quiet, it held tension. When you believed you could not rest, it carried the burden. Listening again begins with respect. Respect does not require understanding everything the body says. It only requires willingness to notice without judgment. Many people fear listening to their bodies because they worry they will be overwhelmed. Yet listening does not mean acting immediately. It means acknowledging. Acknowledgement alone creates relief. I often suggest beginning by simply noticing sensations. Without labels, without stories, notice where the body feels open, notice where it feels guarded. This noticing brings you back into relationship with yourself. You may discover that your body responds quickly when you offer kindness. A soft breath, a relaxed shoulder, a deeper exhale. These are signs that trust is beginning to return. The body feels safest when it knows it will be heard. When you say to yourself, "I am listening," the body relaxes. Even if you do not know what to do yet, listening is enough. You may notice that some sensations carry emotion. Tightness may hold fear, heaviness may hold sadness. Allow these feelings to be present without needing to fix them. Feeling is not dangerous when met with compassion. Your body lives in the present moment. It does not hold grudges. It responds to what you are thinking now. This means that change is always available. I want you to notice the difference between a thought that feels anxious and a signal that feels steady. Anxiety rushes. It pressures. The body's truth is quieter. It does not hurry you. When you imagine a choice or direction, your body will often respond before your mind forms an opinion. This response is information. It is not something to obey blindly, but something to consider with respect. You may have learned to distrust these responses because they were inconvenient or misunderstood by others. That does not make them wrong. It makes them honest. Listening to the body does not mean withdrawing from life. It means engaging with awareness. It means allowing yourself to pause before saying yes. It means noticing when something feels heavy instead of pushing through automatically. I want you to know that the body does not judge your past choices. It does not say you should have listened sooner. It only responds to the present moment. This is great kindness. As you begin listening again, you may notice sensations that were once familiar but long ignored. This is awareness returning. Awareness is the foundation of trust. You may also notice resistance. A voice that says, "This is silly," or "I don't know what I'm feeling." That voice learned to survive in a world that valued logic over sensitivity. Thank it and continue gently. The body responds best to reassurance. You might place a hand on your body and say quietly, "I am here with you." These words create safety. Safety allows truth to emerge. I often remind people that intuition speaks through calm repetition, not urgency. If something truly matters, the body will signal it again, gently and consistently. You do not need to analyze every sensation. Overanalysis pulls you back into the mind. Listening is softer. It is a form of presence. Trust rebuilds when the body experiences consistency. When you notice a signal and respond with care, even in small ways, the body learns something new. It learns that it is no longer alone. You may notice that your body asks for rest when you have been pushing, or space when something feels overwhelming, or honesty when you have been silent. These requests are not demands. They are invitations. Ignoring these invitations does not make you bad. It simply continues an old pattern. Responding to them begins a new one. I want you to remember that your body is not trying to control your life. It is trying to support it. It wants ease, balance, and safety. Listening again may feel unfamiliar at first. That is all right. Anything neglected takes time to rebuild trust. Patience is part of listening. You may also discover moments of relief simply by acknowledging what you feel. Relief comes from being heard, not from having answers. The body softens when you stop arguing with it. When you say, "I hear you," even silently, something changes. I want you to notice how your breath responds when you stop pushing for certainty. Breath is a bridge between body and awareness. When the breath deepens, trust grows. Listening to your body is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming present. Presence is enough to begin healing. You may still make choices that feel uncomfortable. Trust does not eliminate discomfort. It changes how you meet it, with awareness instead of avoidance. Each time you listen and respond kindly, you repair a small piece of the relationship with yourself. Over time, these small repairs create stability. The body remembers kindness. It responds to gentleness more quickly than to force. I want you to know that the signals you feel are not weaknesses. They are guidance. Sensitivity is not something to overcome. It is something to honor. As you continue this practice, you may notice that your inner voice feels clearer. That clarity comes from alignment between body and awareness. You do not need to rush this process. The body does not rush. It responds to rhythm, not pressure. Listening again is an act of courage. It says, "I am willing to trust myself again, one moment at a time." And that willingness is enough. Your body has been waiting for you to listen. Now you are. And trust is beginning to return. I want to speak with you now about guilt, because guilt quietly stands between you and trust. It whispers that you should have known better, that you failed yourself, that your past choices prove something is wrong with you. These whispers feel convincing, yet they are not the voice of truth. They are the echo of misunderstanding. Guilt often appears when we look back with new awareness and judge the person we once were. We forget that awareness grows through experience. We forget that the self who made those choices did not have the understanding you have now. Judging the past with the eyes of the present is deeply unfair. You did not make choices to harm yourself. You made choices to survive, to belong, to feel safe, to be loved. Even when those choices led to pain, the intention behind them was care. That matters. Many people believe they must punish themselves for past decisions in order to become better. They believe guilt is a form of responsibility. Yet guilt does not create growth. It creates fear. Fear does not restore trust. It erodes it further. I want you to notice how guilt feels in your body. Perhaps it feels heavy. Perhaps it tightens the chest or the stomach. The body does not respond to guilt with clarity. It responds with tension. Tension keeps you looking backward instead of present. When you carry guilt, you tell yourself a story about who you are. You tell yourself you are careless, foolish, or weak. These stories keep you from trusting your inner guidance because they convince you that you cannot be trusted. I want you to hear this gently and clearly. Every choice you made was the best choice you could make with the awareness you had at the time. There is no exception to this. Awareness grows only by living. You may look back now and see where you ignored your inner voice. That does not mean you betrayed yourself out of neglect. It means you did not yet know how to protect yourself in another way. Blame often replaces compassion when compassion was not offered to us earlier. If you were taught that mistakes were dangerous or shameful, you may have learned to punish yourself internally. That punishment no longer serves you. Releasing guilt does not mean pretending you never felt pain or regret. It means understanding that regret is a teacher, not a jailer. Once the lesson is learned, the punishment can end. I often remind people that guilt keeps you loyal to the past. Forgiveness frees you for the present. Forgiveness does not erase memory. It releases the charge that keeps you trapped. Self-forgiveness is one of the most powerful acts of healing you can offer yourself. It says, I choose to stand with myself now. That choice restores inner safety. You may feel resistance when you consider forgiving yourself. That resistance often comes from a belief that forgiveness excuses harm. Self-forgiveness does not excuse harm. It allows healing. When you forgive yourself, you are not saying that everything was right. You are saying that you no longer need to suffer to prove you care. The body responds immediately when guilt begins to soften. Breath becomes easier, muscles relax. This is not imagination. This is the nervous system responding to safety. I want you to imagine speaking to your past self with tenderness. Imagine saying you were doing the best you could. Notice how your body responds to that thought. Even if part of you doubts it, let the words rest. You may need to repeat this kindness many times. Guilt was learned through repetition. Forgiveness is learned the same way. Trust cannot grow in an environment of self-punishment. Trust grows when you know you will meet yourself with understanding, even when things go wrong. You may notice that when you release guilt, fear arises. Fear of making mistakes again. Fear of being irresponsible. This fear comes from old conditioning. Trust does not remove responsibility. It replaces fear with awareness. When you trust yourself, you are more attentive, not less. You listen more carefully. You respond more honestly. Guilt dulls awareness. Compassion sharpens it. I want you to consider that holding on to guilt does not protect you from future pain. It keeps you from fully inhabiting the present. The present is where guidance lives. You cannot rebuild trust with yourself while telling yourself you are unworthy of it. Trust begins when you believe you deserve kindness, even when you are imperfect. There may be grief as you release guilt. Grief for time spent judging yourself. Grief for moments you wish had been different. Allow that grief. It is part of healing. Grief softens into wisdom when it is welcome. Wisdom does not condemn, it understands. You may find that as guilt releases, your inner voice feels clearer. That clarity comes from no longer being divided against yourself. I often say that healing is the willingness to stop attacking yourself. When the attack stops, trust has space to grow. You are not required to relive past pain to heal it. You only need to change how you relate to yourself now. Each moment of compassion rewrites the story. The past does not need your punishment. It needs your understanding. You may notice that forgiving yourself feels like relief mixed with vulnerability. That vulnerability is openness returning. Openness is where trust lives. I want you to remember that mistakes are not evidence of unworthiness. They are evidence of learning. Learning is how life evolves through you. When you release guilt, you send a message inward. The message says, I am safe with myself. That message is the foundation of trust. You may still remember your past. That is natural, but you no longer need to carry it as a weight. Memory without blame becomes wisdom. I invite you to say quietly, I forgive myself for not knowing what I know now. Let the words be gentle. Let them be imperfect. Each time you choose forgiveness over guilt, trust strengthens. Slowly, steadily, naturally. You are not defined by your past choices. You are defined by the consciousness you bring to this moment. As you release guilt, you make room for self-respect. Self-respect allows intuition to return. Trust yourself enough to let go of punishment. You have learned, you have grown, and you are allowed to move forward without carrying yesterday's blame. That release is not weakness. It is healing. I want to speak with you now about how trust is rebuilt in real life, because many people believe it requires a dramatic moment or a great declaration. It does not. Trust is rebuilt quietly. through small acts of self-honoring repeated with patience. Just as trust was weakened through small moments of self-abandonment, it is restored through small moments of loyalty to yourself. You do not rebuild trust by promising yourself that you will never make another mistake. That promise would create pressure, and pressure does not create safety. Trust grows when you learn that you will treat yourself kindly no matter what happens. Self-honoring begins with noticing. Noticing what you feel, noticing what you need, noticing what feels right or wrong in small, everyday moments. These moments may seem insignificant, yet they are where trust lives. You may start by honoring something very simple, resting when you are tired instead of pushing, eating when you are hungry instead of ignoring your body, pausing before you answer instead of responding automatically. Each of these moments sends a message inward. The message is not loud, but it is powerful. It says, I am paying attention to you. And when attention is consistent, trust begins to grow. Many people believe self-honoring means always doing what feels comfortable. That is not true. Self-honoring means listening honestly and responding with respect. Sometimes the response is rest, sometimes it is courage. The key is that the response comes from awareness rather than fear. You may notice that when you begin honoring yourself in small ways, discomfort arises. Guilt may appear, fear may appear, old habits may protest. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are changing an old pattern. When you have spent a long time ignoring yourself, your system needs time to learn that it is safe to listen. Safety is built through repetition, not explanation. I often remind people that trust is built through reliability. When you begin to reliably respond to your own needs, your inner system relaxes. It no longer has to shout to be heard. Self-honoring also means keeping small promises to yourself. Not large promises about who you will become, but small promises about how you will treat yourself. Promises like speaking kindly when you make a mistake, or allowing yourself to stop when you feel overwhelmed. Each time you keep one of these promises, trust deepens. Each time you break one, trust is not destroyed, but it asks for repair. Repair comes through honesty and compassion, not criticism. You may notice that when you honor yourself, your inner voice becomes clearer. That clarity comes from alignment. When your thoughts and actions match your inner truth, confusion fades. Self-honoring requires patience. You may listen to yourself one day and forget the next. This is not failure, it is practice. Trust is built over time, not in a straight line. I want you to be especially gentle with yourself when you notice old patterns returning. Old patterns return when they feel threatened. Thank them for trying to protect you and choose kindness again. You do not need to honor yourself perfectly. You only need to honor yourself consistently enough that your inner system begins to believe you. Small acts of self-honoring include saying no when you mean no, even if your voice shakes. They include saying yes to rest without explaining yourself. They include allowing your feelings without judging them. You may have learned that honoring yourself is selfish. That belief often comes from environments where your needs were not welcomed. Honoring yourself is not selfish. It is responsible. When you honor yourself, you create an inner environment where trust can grow. Without that environment, trust cannot take root. I want you to notice how your body responds when you honor yourself. Often there is a sense of relief, even if fear is present. Relief is the body recognizing safety. You may also notice a sense of strength emerging quietly, not the strength of force, but the strength of alignment. Alignment feels calm, not urgent. Self-honoring also means respecting your limits. Limits are not failures. They are signals of balance. When you ignore limits, trust erodes. When you respect them, trust grows. You may find it helpful to speak kindly to yourself as you practice. Words like, I am learning, or I am allowed to take this step slowly. These words support the process. Trust does not require that you always get the outcome you want. It requires that you remain loyal to yourself, regardless of outcome. Loyalty is the foundation of trust. I often say that self-love is shown through action, not intention alone. Intention is important, but action teaches the body what to expect. Each time you honor yourself, you teach your inner system that it is safe to speak up. Over time, the signals become clearer because they are no longer ignored. You may discover that honoring yourself brings up sadness for times you did not allow that sadness. It is part of healing. Sadness softens into compassion when welcomed. Self-honoring also means celebrating small moments of alignment. You do not need to wait for big changes to acknowledge growth. Growth happens quietly. You may notice that as trust grows, you rely less on others to tell you what is right for you. Guidance begins to feel internal again. This is not isolation. It is grounding. You may still seek input from others. That is natural. The difference is that you no longer override yourself to accommodate them. You include yourself in the conversation. Honoring yourself also means responding gently when you make a choice that does not work out as you hoped. Trust is strengthened when you know you will not punish yourself for being human. I want you to remember that trust is not built through control. It is built through consistency and care. You do not need to rush this process. Small acts repeated over time create profound change. You are learning to become someone you can rely on, someone who listens, someone who responds with kindness, someone who stays. Each time you honor yourself, even in a small way, you repair a piece of the relationship. Those repairs add up, and slowly, steadily, trust returns. Not as certainty, not as perfection, but as a quiet knowing that you are no longer alone with yourself. You are standing by yourself now, and that changes everything. I want to speak with you now about confidence, because many people believe confidence is something they must reach before they can trust themselves. They wait to feel certain, steady, or sure before listening inward. Yet confidence does not come first. Confidence grows after trust has already begun to return. When trust has been broken, people often try to replace it with control. They rehearse decisions, they overthink, they search for reassurance. They try to eliminate all risk before moving forward. This does not create confidence, it creates tension. Confidence is not loud, it does not announce itself. True confidence feels quiet and grounded. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you will stay with yourself. That knowing grows only through trust. You may remember times when you appeared confident on the outside while feeling unsure inside. That kind of confidence requires constant effort. It depends on approval and outcomes. It fades quickly when something goes wrong. The confidence that grows from self-trust is different. It does not depend on being right. It depends on being loyal. Loyal to your feelings, loyal to your body, loyal to your truth, even when the outcome is uncertain. I want you to notice how often you tell yourself that you will trust yourself once you feel confident. That belief keeps confidence always just out of reach. Trust must come first, gently and imperfectly. Each time you honor yourself in a small way, trust grows. And as trust grows, confidence begins to appear naturally, not as excitement, but as steadiness. You may feel moments of calm, certainty that surprise you. Moments where you simply know what feels right, without needing to explain it. These moments are signs that confidence is returning quietly. Confidence does not mean you will never feel doubt. It means doubt no longer stops you from listening to yourself. Doubt may still visit, but it no longer leads. When you trust yourself, you stop asking, "What if I'm wrong?" and begin asking, "Can I stay kind with myself if this doesn't go as planned?" That shift changes everything. I often remind people that confidence is the result of safety inside. When you feel safe with yourself, you take honest steps. When you feel unsafe, you hesitate or overcompensate. Safety inside comes from knowing you will not abandon yourself. It comes from knowing you will listen, respond, and forgive. This is the foundation of confidence. You may notice that as trust grows, your need to explain yourself lessens. You do not feel the same urge to justify your choices. This is not defensiveness leaving, it is self-respect arriving. Confidence does not argue, it does not persuade. It simply stands. You may still feel nervous when you take new steps. Nervousness does not mean lack of confidence. It means you care. Confidence allows nervousness without letting it take control. When you expect confidence to feel bold, you may miss it when it arrives quietly. Look for steadiness instead. Look for a sense of being anchored in yourself. Confidence from trust feels like this: I may not know everything, but I know how to listen. That is enough. You may also notice that as confidence grows, your body changes how it holds itself. Shoulders soften, breath deepens, movement feels more natural. The body reflects inner safety. Confidence grows through experience, not imagination. Each time you listen and respond kindly, you gather evidence that you can rely on yourself. Even when outcomes are disappointing, confidence can still grow if you meet yourself with compassion. Punishing yourself erodes confidence. Understanding strengthens it. I want you to release the idea that confidence means certainty about the future. No one has that. Confidence means trust in your ability to respond to whatever arises. You may notice that you become less reactive as trust grows. You pause more, you listen more, you choose more intentionally. This is confidence in action. I often say that confidence is not about being fearless. It is about being willing to feel fear without abandoning yourself. When you trust yourself, fear becomes information rather than a command. You can listen to fear without letting it decide for you. You may still ask others for input. That is natural. The difference is that you no longer override yourself to accommodate them. You consult, but you decide. Confidence grows when your inner voice carries more weight than external opinions. That shift does not happen overnight. It happens through practice. You may notice moments when you hesitate less, when you answer more honestly, when you move more simply. These are signs of confidence forming. Confidence also means allowing yourself to change your mind. Rigidity often disguises insecurity. Confidence is flexible. It responds to new information without shame. You are allowed to say, "This no longer feels right," even if it once did. Growth requires adjustment. When confidence grows from trust, life feels less like a test and more like a conversation. You listen, you respond, you learn. I want you to understand that confidence does not remove vulnerability. It makes vulnerability safer. When you trust yourself, you can be open without feeling exposed. You may still have days when you doubt yourself. That does not erase confidence. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. It is the absence of self-betrayal. Each time you stay with yourself through doubt, confidence strengthens. I want you to notice how different it feels to encourage yourself rather than criticize. Encouragement supports growth. Criticism freezes it. You are not meant to push yourself into confidence. You are meant to grow into it through care. As trust deepens, you may find that decisions feel simpler, not because they are easy, but because you are aligned. Alignment reduces inner conflict. Confidence from trust does not rush. It waits until something feels right. It respects timing. You may notice that you feel more present in your body as confidence grows. Presence is a sign that you are no longer leaving yourself. Confidence also means trusting your ability to repair. Even if something goes wrong, you can return to yourself with kindness. That knowing creates freedom. I often remind people that confidence is built the same way trust is built, through repetition. Each small act of self-loyalty adds to it. You do not need to feel confident to act. Acting with awareness builds confidence naturally. You may discover that the more you trust yourself, the less you need to prove anything. Proving comes from doubt. Presence comes from trust. Confidence is not something you wear. It is something you feel when you are at home in yourself. As you continue honoring yourself, confidence will continue to grow, quietly, steadily, without force. You are not behind in learning this. You are learning it in the way that lasts. Confidence that grows from trust does not collapse under pressure. It bends, it adjusts, it remains, and most importantly, it stays with you. As we move toward the final part together, we will explore what it means to live as someone who stands by herself with love. For now, let this truth settle gently. You do not need to wait to feel confident to trust yourself. Trust is already growing, and confidence is following. I want to speak with you now about what it truly means to live as someone who stands by herself. Not in defiance, not in isolation, but in love. When trust has been rebuilt, even gently and imperfectly, something profound changes in the way you move through life. You no longer feel as though you must leave yourself behind to belong. You carry yourself with you. Standing by yourself does not mean you will never feel unsure again. It means that when uncertainty appears, you do not turn against yourself. You stay present, you listen, you respond with care. This is the deepest form of self-love, and it is what makes trust sustainable. Many people believe that self-love is a feeling. In truth, it is a relationship. And like any relationship, it is shown through behavior. It is shown through how you speak to yourself when things go wrong. It is shown through whether you listen when your body asks you to slow down. It is shown through whether you stay or disappear when emotions feel uncomfortable. Living as someone who stands by herself means that you become your own safe place. Not because life never challenges you, but because you know you will meet those challenges without abandoning yourself. That knowing changes everything. You may notice that when you begin to stand by yourself, certain old patterns no longer feel possible. You may find it harder to say yes when your heart says no. You may find it harder to stay silent when something feels dishonest. This is not rigidity, this is alignment. Alignment feels calm. Even when decisions are difficult, there is a sense of inner agreement. You are no longer split inside, arguing with yourself. That inner harmony is one of the greatest gifts of self-trust. Standing by yourself also means allowing others to be who they are without shrinking yourself to accommodate them. This may feel unfamiliar at first. If you were taught that love required self-sacrifice, choosing self-respect may feel risky, yet self-respect is not rejection. It is clarity. When you stand by yourself, your relationships may shift. Some may deepen because they were waiting for your honesty. Others may fall away because they depended on your silence. This is not loss. It is truth rearranging itself. I want you to know that you are not responsible for managing other people's comfort at the expense of your own well-being. Love does not require self-erasure. True love includes you. Living with self-trust means you no longer need to prove your worth through effort or endurance. You stop measuring yourself by how much you can tolerate. You begin measuring yourself by how honestly you live. You may notice that your choices become simpler. Not because life is simpler, but because you are clearer. When you trust yourself, you do not need to debate every feeling. You listen and you respond. Standing by yourself also means allowing yourself to change. You may outgrow beliefs, desires, or directions that once felt right. Trust allows you to adjust without shame. Growth is not betrayal of the past. It is honoring the present. You are allowed to say, "This no longer fits," without explaining yourself. You are allowed to rest without earning it. You are allowed to choose peace over approval. I often remind people that when you stand by yourself, you stop asking, "Am I enough?" and begin living as though you are. That shift is quiet, yet powerful. Self-trust does not make you inflexible. It makes you responsive. You listen to new information, you adapt, you remain open. What changes is that you no longer betray yourself in the process. You may still feel fear when you choose yourself. Fear is familiar. Fear learned to keep you safe. But now you are learning a deeper safety, the safety of self-respect. Fear may speak, but it no longer decides. Standing by yourself means you do not punish yourself when things do not go as planned. You meet disappointment with understanding. You ask what can be learned instead of who is to blame. This keeps trust intact. You are no longer trying to become someone worthy of trust. You are living as someone who is trustworthy to herself. You may notice that your inner voice changes as you practice this. It becomes kinder, more encouraging, less critical. This is not something you force. It emerges naturally when safety is present. Living with self-trust also means allowing joy without suspicion. Many people who have learned to doubt themselves also learn to brace for disappointment. Standing by yourself allows you to enjoy what feels good without waiting for it to be taken away. Joy becomes possible when you are not constantly monitoring yourself for mistakes. Ease returns when you are no longer at war with your own feelings. You may notice that your body feels different now, more grounded, more relaxed. The body reflects the relationship you have with yourself. When that relationship becomes loving, the body responds with relief. Standing by yourself does not mean you will never seek guidance or support. It means that when you do not silence yourself to receive it. You include yourself in every decision. You listen to advice, but you also listen inward. You weigh opinions, but you honor your own knowing. This balance creates wisdom. I want you to remember that self-trust is not something you complete. It is something you live. Some days you will live it easily. Other days you will need to return to it gently. Both are part of the journey. When you forget to stand by yourself, do not use that moment to judge yourself. Use it to come back. Coming back is the practice. Each time you return to yourself with kindness, trust deepens. Each time you choose understanding over criticism, the bond strengthens. Living as someone who stands by herself means you no longer ask others to define your worth. Worth becomes an inner knowing rather than an external agreement. You may notice that life feels less chaotic when you live this way, not because challenges disappear, but because you are centered. Centered people are not easily shaken. You do not need to harden yourself to live this way. You soften. Softness is strength when it is rooted in self-respect. I want you to acknowledge how far you have come. Not by comparing yourself to anyone else, but by noticing how differently you treat yourself now. Awareness itself is growth. You are no longer the person who automatically dismisses her own feelings. You are no longer the person who turns inward with blame. You are becoming someone who listens, responds, and stays. That staying is everything. Standing by yourself is not loud. It does not announce itself. It is felt in quiet moments, in the way you pause, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you choose. You may still have questions about the future. That is natural. Standing by yourself does not require having answers. It requires presence. Presence is what keeps you grounded when life shifts. Presence is what allows guidance to be heard. Presence is what makes trust real. I want you to know that you were never meant to live doubting your own wisdom. That doubt was learned, and what is learned can be gently unlearned. Each day you choose to stand by yourself, you rewrite the relationship you have with life. Life responds to self-respect with support. You are not alone in this. You are with yourself now, and that is the most reliable companionship you will ever have. Trust yourself enough to live honestly. Love yourself enough to stay. Honor yourself enough to listen. This is how you rebuild trust in yourself, not as a goal, but as a way of being. And you are already doing it. I want to remain with you for a few more moments because what you have touched here is not meant to be rushed past. Rebuilding trust in yourself is not a single realization. It is a gentle returning that happens many times over a lifetime. This epilogue is an invitation to remember that return. There will be days when trusting yourself feels natural and easy, and there will be days when old doubt appears again, quietly, almost without warning. When that happens, it does not mean you have lost what you gained. It means you are human. Trust does not disappear because it wavers. It strengthens because you know how to come back. I want you to remember that self-trust is not proven in moments of certainty. It is revealed in moments of uncertainty, when you choose not to turn against yourself, when you choose patience instead of punishment, understanding instead of blame. You may notice that as you live this way, your inner world becomes quieter. Not empty, but calm. Calm enough to hear yourself think. Calm enough to feel what is true. Calm enough to pause before reacting. This calm is not something you force. It arrives when safety is restored. Safety comes from knowing that no matter what you feel, you will listen. No matter what choice you make, you will respond with care. No matter what happens, you will stay. There may still be voices from the past that question you. Old doubts, old fears, old habits of second-guessing. When they appear, greet them kindly. They once tried to protect you. They do not need to be fought or silenced. They soften when they are understood. You are learning a new way of being with yourself, a way that does not depend on perfection, a way that does not require constant effort, a way rooted in respect. I want you to know that you do not need to remember every word you have heard to live this truth. Your body remembers, your heart remembers. The feeling of being on your own side leaves an imprint. When you are faced with a choice in the future, you may pause and notice a quiet sense of direction. It may not feel dramatic, it may feel simple. Trust that simplicity. Trust does not shout, it reassures. You may also notice that you recover more quickly when something does not go as planned. Instead of collapsing into self-criticism, you adjust. That adjustment is trust in action. Self-trust allows you to be flexible without losing yourself. It allows you to grow without erasing who you are. It allows you to move forward without rushing. I want you to carry this understanding gently. Not as something you must maintain perfectly, but as something you can return to whenever you feel unsure. Whenever you notice yourself asking, "Can I trust myself?" Pause and listen for the deeper answer. The answer is not found in the mind, it is felt in the body. It is felt in the way you treat yourself in that moment. Each time you choose kindness over criticism, you strengthen the bond. Each time you choose honesty over habit, trust deepens. Each time you forgive yourself, safety grows. You are not meant to live your life proving your worth. You are meant to live it, honoring your truth. Trusting yourself does not make life predictable. It makes it livable. It gives you a place to stand when things shift. That place is within you. I want you to know that you are not behind in learning this. You are learning it in the way that lasts through awareness, repetition, and love. Whenever you forget, return. Whenever you doubt, listen. Whenever you fall back into old patterns, forgive yourself and begin again. That beginning is always available. You were never meant to live disconnected from your own wisdom. That wisdom has been with you all along, waiting patiently for your return. Now you know the way back, and you can walk it as often as you need. Life loves you, and you are learning day by day to love and trust yourself too.